Hello, I have watched a lot of anime this weekend. Watching the latest anime season, the Winter 2020 anime season. And I'm going to talk about that with you right now for the next little while. I've watched, I believe it's 33 first episodes this season. I'm going to share my thoughts with you. As usual, I'm avoiding any season 2s, season 3s, anything on like that are part of an ongoing franchise that has existing anime seasons, because I figure if you watch season 1, you know you're going to watch season 2. If you haven't watched season 1, you're probably not going to watch season 2. Also, I'm avoiding any anime that is clearly aimed at like kindergartners. There are a few anime out there that's clearly just cute round characters playing. Although there's actually an anime of that this season. But anyway, so we're going to be talking about all of these and trying to avoid. Here's the thing: it's episode 1s, so I'm going to talk about what happens in these episodes, which is technically a spoiler. But if there's anything that I think you should go into something blind about, I will try to avoid talking about. So hopefully this will still be entertaining and useful. And let's just get right into it with 22/7. This was one of the anime that really caught me off guard. It's an idol anime about a group of idol girls, but done as a drama. This is Love Live as through the lens of Madoka Magica. There is very little in the way of comedy in this first episode. There's very little lightness. There's a bit of it in the middle as all the characters are introducing themselves to you. But this is not at all what an idol series is typically like. It deals with a girl who is very quiet, very not an idol, and then things start happening in a very strange premise. Very interesting concept behind this. I was really sucked in and fascinated by 22/7. So if you're looking for an idol series that's not your typical idol series, that is absolutely 22/7, available on Funimation. Also available on Funimation, A3. This is clearly a reverse harem anime. Women surrounded by hot guys. In this case, they are actors. So it is about a young woman who is the inheritor of a theater that is about to be shut down, and she has to bring enough actors together to keep the performances running, and of course they're all hot guys. So I actually enjoyed this episode. I say actually because a lot of reverse harem series tend to have pretty predictable setups and pretty predictable reasons for everyone to be around, and they did a good job of establishing the characters here and making you understand where they were coming from and making them all distinctive in ways that didn't feel as cliched as a lot of these series tend to be, or at least obviously there's the more energetic one, there's the more quiet one, but it didn't feel like this is trope A, trope B, trope C. More accurately, when they were tropey more to actor stereotypes than to reverse harem stereotypes, and I kind of appreciated that. Also, sort of a fun overall tone to the series. Definitely some drama in there, although more melodrama than like real, major drama, at least in this episode. But I really like that. I also like the idea of trying to save the theater. It gives the concept some drive behind it, something for the characters to do instead of just kind of hanging around. So I enjoyed A3. It was fun. Definitely, you know what you're getting into with that kind of thing. Got to admit. Also, another series aimed more at the girls and some of the guys. ARP Backstage Pass, ARP Backstage Pass, is based on an ongoing augmented reality concert series thing with these 4 hot guys who are all basically virtual idols. And they actually already staged like events online. And this anime is basically the backstory anime for those characters. This will explain the backstory for these various singers. Again, this is what it is. It's sort of the tragic backstory of my favorite hot male idol. And as that, it was solidly executed. All the pieces were there. You got to understand some of where these characters are coming from. But it's very much for fans of kind of that franchise, I think. Certainly not unenjoyable by those who aren't into it, but it's more that. What's interesting is they do the standard thing of CGI characters on stage and when they're dancing and singing, and 2D hand-drawn off stage. Although they seem to be doing like mocap for the CGI on stage stuff. Just the movements and the actions feel like they're pulled from real life performances, which is really cool. I liked how they did that. It gave it a kind of a pizzazz that I typically don't see from those sorts of performances. So again, aimed at kind of a particular audience, but it certainly did that thing. Moving on to Asteroid in Love. This is probably the most sort of traditional moe anime series of the season. It's about girls in an astronomy club, although there's a complexity there. But it's basically girls hanging out in a club room, chatting and arguing and all that kind of stuff. You've seen other anime like this. This is more anime like that, which is not a complaint. I think this actually executes that well. There's a solid animation budget in that first episode. Certainly more than you would need in a show like this. And the girls are cute. The personalities are distinctive, and if you're looking for that kind of slice of life-esque or sort of school life-esque anime series with cute girls, this will fit the bill very, very well. Hard to tell if it's going to go into kind of hard to tell where it's going to go. I think it's going to be sort of the ongoing stories and adventures of these girls in their club. I don't think it's going to get particularly, remarkable as the show. I don't think they're going to become astronauts at the end, right? I think it's going to be school life stuff. But sometimes that's exactly what you want, and I think Asteroid in Love is going to give you that. So a fun series for that kind of a thing. Speaking of fun, Bofuri. I don't want to get hurt, so I'll max out my defense. Main character joins an MMO, a VR MMO, and has never played any VR MMOs before, and isn't quite sure what to do. And she's actually waiting around for a friend of hers to join to play with, and she's not sure what's going on. She's like, well, I probably shouldn't die in the game. I should avoid dying, because then I'll be out of the game and, waiting for it to respawn, whatever. So I'll just max out my defense stat, my vitality, and puts all of her points in vitality. And then as she plays the game, she kind of lucks into it. And again, this is all kind of episode 1, back of the box standard stuff. She kind of lucks into various situations and kind of exploits of the game based on having such incredibly high vitality. She can take out monsters because they just can't kill her. So she could conceivably, take a single dagger and attack a dragon and just keep on slashing away at it, and it's doing all its attacks on her, and just, her hit points stay exactly where they are, and so she just keeps on slashing, and if she just does that for 4 hours, eventually she'll wear down its hit points until it dies. That's not what happens, but it's that kind of, exactly. But that kind of thing is the concept. And of course, when she kills the dragon, she gets massive experience points, she levels up, and she puts all those points into her vitality. So I like it for playing around with MMO tropes, with video game and like D&D tropes, that there are these weird things that the systems and mechanics of the game do, where if you're not playing it the way you're supposed to play it, weird things happen. But that's not necessarily that you're doing it wrong, you're just not playing it the way folks thought you were going to play it. And having a character who's kind of just doesn't know how all this is supposed to go and kind of clueless is fun to watch. So enjoying, an enjoyable thing, nice budget, and definitely a light series. Playing around with these premises, and just kind of a joyous exploration of this thing that we all kind of, have probably done before, had some experience with. But it doesn't have to be quite that serious or whatever. Let's see here. Moving on to Breakers. Don't think a lot of folks are catching Breakers, and this is an interesting one. As you can see, this is an anime series about para-athletes, Paralympiads. The main character of the first episode is this young man there who is missing his legs and a couple of fingers as well, who wants to play basketball and ends up getting into wheelchair basketball. The art style is very interesting. It is kind of what you see here. It has this kind of very shonen style to it. The animation budget is a little bit inconsistent in the first episode. Some really nicely animated stuff. A few other things that are a little rough around the edges. But very interesting seeing this kind of an anime series. Obviously, as we're leading up to the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, this is a natural match for that. Really hard to tell. This is also, I think, half-length episodes, like 15-minute episodes, or 12-minute episodes, and so there's not. It's hard to tell, where the show is going, how complex it's going to get, whatever. I certainly found myself pulled into their stories. I also like the fact that it's the tone of the series is just, here are people in the situation, and here's what they're doing with the situation, right? It is very much celebrating the accomplishments of people, whoever they happen to be, and just the folks that happen to be in this in this place in their life, and pushing forward with that. Let's see here. Moving on to the case files of Jeweler Richard over on Crunchyroll. I actually appreciated this one because it's sort of a Sherlock Light kind of an anime series. The Richard in the title is the blonde man there who is a jewelry appraiser, and first episode obviously is a particular case he's involved in involving I won't tell you about what that is, but suffice to say, jewelry comes under his watch, and he investigates and finds out what's going on, and then this other young man ends up getting involved with him as well. And what's nice is it's a drama. It is about this guy investigating these things, talking to folks, finding out their backstories. There's no, intense crime investigation music. There's no, melodrama around will we catch the killer. It's just this very calm, quiet story of Richard and this other character, doing their things, and it's just this very mature, mystery drama. I really like that. It wasn't trying to be more than what it was. So often we get these anime series that just try to push it. They try to push it, and it doesn't push it. It's just it tells its story. Thank you. Really enjoyed that. Obviously not up for everyone. Like, there's no action. There's some comedy, but more in like dialogue stuff. But it's that. It's mystery detective stuff, which is pretty cool. Moving on to Darwin's Game. You're trapped in a game that when you'll die if you leave and everyone's trying to kill you, right? It's that. It's what is it? Battle Royale. It's a Battle Royale anime. We've seen a lot of these. I will say that this anime series does a fine job of pulling you in and establishing the kind of the stakes and situation of the game. And no, I take that back. What I liked about Darwin's Game is that it felt cinematic. It felt like it was pacing things at an appropriate pace for what the characters are understanding. It felt like a somewhat more mature take on a, let's be honest, kind of goofy premise, right? That there's a game where you're killing other people, and it's just hard to believe that kind of thing in real life. And I like that that it's kind of taking that more serious approach for this. Now there's some kind of anime aspects to it. There's the girl in the red dress is this hyper skilled combatant. Not that girls can't be combatants, but she's the way she fights is kind of over the top anime style. So there's some not particularly realistic stuff, but so many battle royales are melodramatic to a fault. And while there's certainly melodrama here, it feels a little more grounded than your typical one. So I like that. Again, one of those things where if you hear battle royale real life thing and that appeals to you, this will appeal to you. If that doesn't appeal to you, it probably won't. it's probably not going to, convert anyone not interested in that premise, but it does execute that premise in a way that I found kind of interesting. Then there's A Destructive God Sits Next to Me. So there's this sort of subgenre of school comedies where the main character has somebody else in class that's constantly annoying them. Tonari no Seki-kun was one. My Neighbor Seki. There was the one with the boy and the girl's constantly like terrorizing the guy from a couple of seasons ago. This is that kind of subgenre. Main character has this guy sitting next to him who is believes he's like he has this demon god inside him, inside his eye patch, and is very over the top and ridiculous, and the main character is just trying to avoid him and not, interact with him. So it's that kind of a concept here. Ridiculous, silly, and certainly relying on frustration humor, right? Where you're seeing a character just being annoyed and that is funny, which certainly can work, and I think it does that effectively. Is not my kind of humor, I will admit, but I did laugh several times. The art style also I found attractive, cute, whatever you kind of call it. It's not trying to be cutesy, but certainly nice to look at in that sense, and very consistently animated. One of the things that kind of impressed me is that I was like, man, there's some budget behind this. These things tend to be cheap. And this is not cheap, so good on them there. Although there's a wide variety of, obviously reaction shots and such. But that was kind of an interesting one. But yeah, like one of the chatters is saying, if you're not into that kind of a character archetype of the really annoying character, that might turn you off. FYI. Moving on to Dorohedoro, not sure where or if this is streaming anywhere. Adaptation of a well-known manga set in this very weird urban environment. So think kind of like Blam, although not like futuristic, more like industrial kind of environment. Smokestacks everywhere, a lot of metal, no real vegetation anywhere. People living in this environment, and very wild place. A lot of beast people and weird creatures, and some humans as well. A lot of wild designs put into it. A lot of very interesting character designs, and very, very bloody. The first 60 seconds or so of this anime will give you a really good idea of whether you're going to like it or not, because it's this very bloody fight scene between two characters, and I actually really appreciated this, that they really set the tone in that opening scene of, it's this dark, it's weird, it's kind of creepy, there's some bizarre things in the premise, very clearly, very intentionally, and I love just kind of how it is getting across it's on Netflix, that makes sense. What's also weird is it is a mix of CGI and hand-drawn, and by that I mean some characters are sometimes hand-drawn and sometimes CGI, and it could be one shot followed by another shot. They do a very, very good job of matching, where you don't look at one and say, ooh, that looks completely different, but the animation, in one and the animation in the next is hand-drawn and hand-drawn and CGI. So I think what they're trying to do here is get to a point where you can have hand-drawn in CGI for the same character and not really tell. And where if this scene calls for CGI animation, because you gotta, rotate around the character and do all sorts of weird stuff, we'll do that in CGI. If we want to do hand-drawn, we'll do it hand-drawn. I'll have to wait to see how it turns out. I found it, because I've seen a lot of anime and a lot of CGI, and that's not bragging, I just have, I can tell, but I think somebody who hasn't wouldn't. I think there are moments when you'd notice, but for me, my eye was just drawn to those differences. So I'm really intrigued to see if other folks have that reaction to Dorohedoro. It is certainly an anime where, again, because of this hyper-violence to it, some folks are going to be completely turned off. but it's definitely a visually fascinating anime. The setting is distinctive. The characters are distinctive. So yeah, it's an interesting one. It's experimenting in some ways with anime. The characters are kind of archetypical, but I think that's made up for by the wildness of the anime. And that's the thing. None of this CGI was bad. All the CGI I saw was very well executed. Again, to be clear, I am not complaining at all about the CGI. I could just tell that that one was CGI, one was hand drawn. So we'll see. I don't know. But it's a neat experiment. Speaking of I don't know, what is Hatena illusion? So, girl is part of a magician family. Both of her parents are magicians, and she lives in this massive mansion, absurdly huge mansion. And then this boy shows up who's sort of a childhood friend, and comes to live with them, and hijinks ensues, and I think it's going to be a harem anime with magic and thievery and night adventures. I don't know. It's all over the place, and I'm not complaining. Again, it's just a lot of different things all thrown together. Certainly comedy, certainly teenagers hanging out and walking in on each other in the shower, kind of hijinks, but also weird family secrets and an overprotective maid and just all sorts of it's like 5 genres all happening at once. And I'm shaking my head a lot. And I thoroughly enjoyed this episode. I was like, I could totally watch more of this. It's just, every 5 minutes it felt like it was shifting to a slightly different genre, or adding another genre onto what it was already doing. So I'm actually pretty intrigued as to where this is going, but I can't tell. I just do not know what the idea here is. But definitely fun, definitely lighthearted overall in tone. And yeah, it's kind of emblematic of this season. There's a lot going on this season that I just did not expect. Moving on to Hentatsu. I'm not sure what to say about Hentatsu because I think the entire first episode is a joke. 3-minute episodes. The first episode is the 2 characters running away from and fighting this sort of pyramid monster. And then they're in a cafe saying, so, in your first episode, you show something and then cut to something completely different, right? Like, yeah, that's what you do. And that's the first episode. Like, I don't know what this show is at all. It appears to be all CGI, although the CGI is very much mimicking hand-drawn in terms of, frame rate and movement and so forth. So I'm not sure. I honestly could not tell. Some of the shots looked like limited CGI, very intentionally, we're not going to tween everything perfectly. So it's interesting. Again, very experimental, very odd. I think it'll be a fun, cute, very self-aware comedy. But I can't tell. I don't know what this thing is. But keep an eye out for it. ID Invaded. Ooh, so those who've been following me for a while know that I like dramatic anime. I like serious anime. And that is what ID Invaded is. ID Invaded is, and I don't want to tell you too much about it because, oh man, it's a detective show set inside the mind. Yeah. And so you see an internal psychic representation of the characters, of the person's thoughts, but in a consistent pattern. In other words, it's not a constantly shifting dream. It is, what is one world setting that kind of represents everything we're trying to understand about this person at this one time. So you have this character in this kind of world. who is then trying to interpret the imagery around him so as to understand, what was happening in like the crime thing. It's fascinating. Really good animation budget. So it's sort of like sci-fi NCIS. And there are characters like outside observing this. So there's that whole aspect of kind of the whole war room of people standing around saying, oh, this is happening, but what about this? I just heard XYZ is going on. Call the police, whatever. Or call it backup. I really dug what they were doing here, in the sense that it is a very inventive way of approaching a detective show, like a crime investigation show. Loved that concept, especially because if, as the viewer, you can understand the significance of those elements, you can kind of piece together what's going on. And sure enough, like, as I was watching it, I noticed a discrepancy, and I was like, are they going to address that? And they addressed that. So that's the kind of show it is, where you should be paying attention, and I just really, really love that. But it's a drama, it's a cop show, there's not really much in the way of comedy or anything, it's a serious detective show with this very interesting twist. Really cool. Should warn you, first episode is a two-parter, which ends, is a two-parter, and there's a cliffhanger at the end of the first part. So if you watch the first episode, like, there's going to be a thing where you're like, I really want to watch the second episode. FYI. Moving on to, if my favorite pop idol made it to the Budokan, I would die! Oh, man. This is an anime about otaku. Specifically, idol otaku. Fans of Japanese idols. And more specifically, about someone who's a fan of a small idol group. A group that's not super popular. And she is a fan of the least popular girl in that group. So this is on, this is a show about fandom, and the kind of absurd lengths fans will go to, be fans of things and interact with their favorite celebrities and such. But then there's a whole other element about it where there's clearly, so the idol in question clearly knows who this young woman is. It's a female fan. Clearly knows who this young woman is because, like, she's the first person to show up in the line. Like, they've seen each other a lot. But is very nervous about that. And the fan is very nervous about the idol because she, thinks the idol is the greatest thing in the world. So it's about this sort of, what are we fans of? Right? Are you a fan of, idol character number 5, or are you a fan of the human being? And then as a fan, who are you? Right? Are you the person who is showing up at all these events? Are you that complex human being behind all that? Why are you a fan of this person? So there's this really interesting element to all that. And I'm, there's not a lot of that comes out in the first episode. But there's clearly those elements there being layered in. A lot happens in this first episode. And I really like that. I also appreciate this representation of female fans. She's basically a Fujoshi. And they represent her as showing up at these events, and there's several guys there that she's friends with who are also fans of the idol group in general. And so presenting female fans as just other fans as part of the fandom is nice to see. And the fact that, like, she's obsessed, but so are they. Like, they're all the same. They're all crazy. But that's the that's kind of the fun of it is seeing that and seeing what they will go through for, the chance to get the ticket for the special event. And I also appreciate it's a very loving portrayal of fandom, where again it's saying yes, otaku are will go to extremes, but that's because they love it so much. That's because that's they're coming at it from a good place, right? This is a non-destructive hobby. Really enjoyed that a lot. Again, a very loving portrayal of fandom. Moving on to Infinite Dendrogram. Character heads into a VR MMO, And I'm going to admit, I don't remember much of anything about this anime. I remember he heads out into this world, and it's a fantasy adventure series, and I found it perfectly enjoyable, and then that's it. I might go back to it. I am not complaining about it. It just kind of vanished out of my head, which is one of the problems with watching 33 anime series in one weekend, is that if your show isn't really remarkable, it can sometimes kind of drop out of the mind. So this might be one of those shows a lot of other people watch that I'm just like, yeah, I'm sure it's good. But it just didn't really stand out to me much. But if you're into, obviously, fantasy adventure stuff, it's there. I am remembering. It goes into the world. There are various things you can get. Oh, okay. Actually, I say that. It's come back to me now. Ha. Yes. It's just that cover art, while beautiful, doesn't remind me anything of what happens in the anime. So, this is weird. I actually really liked this episode because, as a programmer and somebody who has experienced video games, they set up certain aspects of this VR world and certain consequences to behavior that are really, really smart from a game design perspective. And that may seem like damning with faint praise, but this is an anime series in which they set up kind of drama, and it's like, how do you do drama in a video game? That doesn't make sense. They're like, aha, here's how, because of these aspects of the game. And I was really impressed by that. And I loved how they structured it. Also, this guy has the most awesome older brother. The staff clearly thought through this world and this setting. And that I really appreciated. I will say by the end of the first episode, I'm like, this could be very generic, hard to say, but the opening was pretty promising and a pretty high animation budget for that first episode. So that was pretty cool. I did enjoy this quite a lot. Also enjoyed Inspector. Probably not revealing anything to reveal that there's a supernatural element to Inspector. But I'm going to tell you very little about this anime series. I think it's worth coming into this having no idea what's going on. I really appreciated the personalities of the main characters, and how they interact with each other over the course of the episode, and how they kind of reveal what's going on. It does start, and it will show you things that will cause you to ask questions, and then it will address those questions over the course of that first episode. And other mysteries, other questions are introduced, which will get resolved later. But it is one of those things where at first you're like, what is all this? And that will be explained. It won't stay weird forever. And I really like that. So, again, loved the characters, loved the fact that they were not really traditional anime archetypes, and the fact that it goes in some very interesting directions over the course of that first episode. When you're watching something and you're like, okay, I know where this is going, and then about 7 minutes later you're like, wait a minute, they just said that. Why did they say that? And then something else happened. You're like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, and then 5 minutes later you're like, okay, wait a minute. If she can do that, right? It's that kind of thing. Fun one. That was one that's really intriguing for me. Okay, now I'm going to talk about one, which is this is not a show to watch with your parents in the room. This is not a show to watch when there are folks who are curious about anime but not quite sure what it all is and are afraid that it's all porn. Interspecies Reviewers is set in a fantasy world in which the two main characters are adventurers, and they frequent the red light district of their city. And for those not familiar with the term, it is a place full of ladies of negotiable affection, if you get my drift. And because they kind of come back to the tavern with various tall tales, they end up writing reviews of their experiences. And so the entire anime series is, and I'm trying to be delicate about this, their various reviews about what it is like spending a night with various fantasy species. So with a Lamia, or an angel girl, or a demon girl, or whatever. So we went into this, and by the way, it was me and two women watching this during my anime party, and we were like, all right, let's find out. And we all turned to each other and we were like, that was a lot more fun than I thought it would be. Like, that was actually, like, very playful. They do very much set up that this is not an Earth version of this. Like, this is all very positive, upbeat, these are all people just, trading their, themselves for time, or for money, rather. So that it doesn't get creepy in that way. And it is played very much jokingly. It is played as a farce. It is very silly, very goofy, and kind of also playing around with various aspects of what would it be like, right, with that. So I will say, if you hear things you're like, no, you're not going to miss anything, right? This is not going to change your life. But if you're like, that sounds kind of fun, it is kind of fun. I will admit it. I will point out there is an uncensored version as well. And also further, I will say that it is a extremely hard R. It is not full scale. Like, you do not actually see. I mean, it's not H, right? Anyway, moving on from that, keep your hearts off Eizouken. This is one of the shows I will definitely be following. The main characters are artists who decide to get into anime. And I don't think I've ever seen an anime series so effectively get across what that's like. What it's like to be inspired by animation. What it's like to love it, what it's like to be aware of how it works, of what character animation does on screen, how to translate movement on. Oh my gosh. There's a sequence in this that just blew all of us away in terms of how it represents what a piece of concept art is, and how inspiring it can be. This is an anime about. Oh man, this is an anime about loving anime. It's stunning. Directed by Masaki Yuasa of Night of Short Walk On Girl and Lou Over the Wall and Mind Game and all sorts of crazy, amazing stuff. The tone of this is a little less wild than his typical anime series, which says a lot. He can be very, very wild. And this is still distinctive. This is still eclectic, as JJ says in the chat. But it's not so eclectic that it's completely bizarre. Oh man, if you like anime as anime, if you like animation, all the background behind all that works. This is it. Oh yes, this is it. I adore every aspect of this. High animation budget. Very distinctive artistic style, fun characters that interact in fun ways. Sometimes they're arguing, sometimes they're not. Crazy energy, just a lot of energy coming at you, which I love. And they're geeking out over Future Boy Conan. That's pretty darn cool. That was a hard transition, wasn't it? Moving on to Natsunagu, speaking of hard transitions. The main character is a girl, a young woman, college-age girl who is heading to a particular part of Japan, trying to track down a friend of hers who she lost contact with during the 2016 earthquake. It is unclear from episode 1 whether the person has literally passed away or whether they just, I'll put it this way. They kind of abruptly lost contact, and she's not sure what that meant, whether the person just, whatever may have happened. But that's the basic concept. Now, this is a 3-minute episode anime. Very distinctive art style in this, a little sketchy. In terms of the art style, just has some rough lines very intentionally, which I really like, and the animation itself feels a little rough and tumble, again in a very very intentional way, and the art style in general has this kind of muted color palette, which is really cool. And so she basically ends up going to various spots in this part of Japan. Exploring it and kind of seeing the sights as she's trying to find her friend. So it's clearly sort of a tourism anime, but with this fairly heavy undercurrent. Not sure where that's, where it's going to go, what the overall tone is going to be. The first episode is much more upbeat comedic in tone, but like the theme seems a little heavier. Hard to tell, like the theme song seems heavier. Imagery in that. Don't know, but really, really nice little thing. Moving on to Nekopara. So I believe this is based on a manga and a video game or some ongoing thing. Nekopara is cute. It's cat girls. This is the season of cat girls, by the way, apparently. And they are these girls owned by this family, and they go back and forth to various places. And it's one of those anime where halfway through I was like, okay, this is cute. Kind of weird, and then they reveal various aspects of the anime's setting, which just made me feel kind of weird. These characters are actually cats, like they are owned by, okay. So there are some anime in which a girl is a cat, but like as far as the world can see, she is a cat, a 4-limbed furry creature, but to our eyes, to the audience's eyes, she's a humanoid girl, right? Maybe to the owner's eyes, she's a humanoid girl, but she's really a cat. These characters are actually cats. They're actually owned by their owners, and they go out in public only if they have a little bell around their neck, which means that they can go out in public. Otherwise, they have to stay at their owner's home. Yeah. So apparently this is based on a work that is not for children, and the bones of that do kind of show through sometimes. Now, episode 1 is entirely just cutesy little anime girl characters running around, getting distracted and trying to deliver things and so forth. Some of the outfits are a little revealing, but in general, it's one of those things where clearly they tried to kind of non-adultify, an anime concept that was aimed for adults, and didn't quite go far enough, right? Like they needed to tweak a few other things of this world, because as it is, when we were done, we looked at each other and we're like, I have so many questions, and I'm unclear on the appropriateness of this anime series, just in terms of the concept. But again, at least episode 1, it's all very innocent thus far. I don't know. Cute. Definitely cute. Who's cute? Not meant to be cute because it's manly, number 24, a rugby anime. Turns out, rugby's huge in Japan. It came over in the early 20s, or in the 1920s. Early 20th century, it is, Japanese rugby dominates Asian rugby. It's a big thing in Asia, and especially in Japan. So the main characters are all on a rugby team. Of course, there's some complexity, and the big question is this. Would the first episode not follow the plot of every other sports anime's first episode? E.g., there is a young person who is extremely gifted at this sport, and they are introduced to the worst team in the league, and now that league has a chance at championships, nationals, whatever. Actually, it does not do that. It does not follow that plot. So thumbs up to number 24. There's an interesting sort of element to the story and what the characters are doing. Interestingly, there is no rugby in the first episode. It's just all characters getting to know each other and getting introduced and occasionally getting shirtless. Yeah, it's that kind of an anime. So if that sounds appealing to you, that's going to be what it is. It is definitely playing off. It's definitely aimed at. I would say it's aimed at the average female fan who likes seeing a lot of beefy guys go around occasionally shirtless. But yeah, that's kind of what that is. But again, there's something interesting going on there in terms of the premise and the character interactions. And when I say there's no rugby, like the when they advertise the next episode, the subtitle for it, or there's an extra little line below it that says, "By the way, there's no rugby in the second episode either, but please bear with us." So they get it too. That it's like we'll get there eventually. Decent anime budget, decent animation budget. Wide variety of characters, some interesting sort of melodrama going on there. It's all there. Moving on to Oda Cinnamon Nobunaga, over on Crunchyroll. So Oda Nobunaga, famous warlord who helped to unite Japan in the Warring States period and bring about the Edo period. And when he dies, he ends up getting reincarnated as a cute dog in modern Japan. But it's okay, because several of the other personages of his time also get reincarnated as dogs and hang out with him at the local dog park. So it's about Oda Nobunaga in the body of a dog, kind of unable to prevent himself from acting like a dog, but also thinking like Oda Nobunaga, a very proud and serious samurai warrior, along with all these other dogs. This is a weird anime. It's a comedy. It's a okay. Here's the problem. A lot of the humor of this anime series is based on your knowledge of Warring States era Japan, and the fact that that dog is acting the way that particular general would act. So if you're not into that, it's kind of hard to appreciate some of the jokes. And a lot of the other humor is, over-the-top reaction humor. The dogs are cute. The humor overall is clearly trying to have fun with things. I'm not against it, but it's weird. It's a weird premise. It's a weird show. It's weird, and for a lot of folks, that's what they're looking for. And again, I'm nothing against that. Okay. I guess that's why not? Why not samurai warlord as dog? And it is cute. Pet is not cute. Pet is a psychological horror anime in which various characters can dive into other characters' minds. Early in the episode, there's this really interesting sequence where one character dives into another character's mind to kind of try to communicate with them. And you get to see sort of this dreamscape inside the person and how they're trying to, and they have dialogue, but they're trying to get things across to each other, and they do that by altering the environment around them to communicate that and to show them various things. I love stuff like that. There's clearly a lot of thought going into Pet in terms of this idea of changing the mind and the just visually how you represent that. There's not much comedy in this anime. It's bad stuff happens to people. And the first episode has some neat twists to it. I will give it that. It's, that said, very dark. And because it's psychological horror, because you can change people's minds, you know, a person can think they're seeing certain things that are not actually there. And I don't think the show is going to do a lot of trickery with that, where, you know, later on they'll reveal, oh, that thing that we showed you earlier wasn't actually there. You know, that might happen within the span of a few minutes in an episode where you see things from someone's perspective, then later it's revealed that that was manipulated. But that's a really, really neat thing to play around with in the world of animation, where you can change anything at any time. And so I'm intrigued to see where they're going to go with Pet. But it is dark. It's a very serious thing, and I'm sure there's some folks who are going to be like, nope, out. Just a little bit too weird and twisted for me, and totally understood. Moving on to Plunderer, a very 90s kind of an anime, frankly. Teenage girl heads out on her adventure because in this world, something happens to her mother, and she's trying to deal with that, and she's trying to find this legendary adventurer. So here's the thing. I'm going to sneeze. Maybe. Maybe not. Who knows? Plunderer has this character in it that's constantly, like, perving on the teenage girl. Constantly, like, you know, trying to look up her skirt and, you know, grab her arm and grab her leg and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, that's kind of creepy. And folks end up, you know, beating him up and all that kind of stuff, and he's kind of punished for it. And then the teenage girl gets into a situation where she is also kind of put under certain physical duress. And I'm like, I'm not comfortable with where this anime is going. It's just, it seems like this girl is here to be a victim and constantly be, you know, perved on by guys. And then the ending was incredibly well structured and very satisfying. As a certain character, I will say, comes to her rescue. And, oh my gosh, like the pacing of that finale, and just everything about that finale was extremely satisfying. But I can't get past the fact that there's definitely a pervy aspect to this show. And that's not the only aspect of it. There's another side character who is, let's just say, very blessed. And this is kind of shown to the audience fairly often. So I'm of two minds about Plunderer. Like, it could really go in some fun directions. It could be a fun, big, bold action-adventure series, but I fear it's going to be like some of those 90s anime where somebody is pervy, but because he gets punched for it, it's okay. Right? And it's, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not comfortable with that. And again, it's because it was so prevalent in the first episode. Because that was like the recurring joke over and over in the first episode. That's what made me uncertain. But there's clearly a lot of interesting kind of shonen-y stuff going on with Plunderer. So, who knows? Just FYI. Might turn you off. Might not. Can't say. And then there's Room Camp. It's a Euro camp, or laid-back camp, in 3-minute segments, where the girls are going off to visit various places. If you like laid-back camp, it's more of that. They don't seem to actually camp in these episodes. They're just visiting various places. But it's more laid-back camp. It's those girls hanging out and doing that thing. So it's camp. It's laid-back camp. I loved that anime series for many reasons. And I just enjoy spending more time with those characters. So that's what that is. Obviously, if you're not... This is a good example, actually, of something where... I probably should not have reviewed this because it's technically a second season. But I thought it was a twist. I thought it was like a SD version or something. But no, it's just more laid-back camp. Just in short form. I'm up for that. Moving on to another comedy. Science fell in love, so I tried to prove it. The main characters are both graduate students in science who are very much concerned with the scientific method and with, you know, proofs and proving things and thinking rationally. and one of them thinks that well, I just said it. One of them thinks she's in love with the other, and they then go about deciding, how do you factually prove love? It has certain aspects of Love is War, because there's this constant competition between the two of them. It's very... It takes its premise and goes hard with that premise, right? It is that. It is them trying to mathematically prove love. And what's great is, that could go wacky, but the staff is clearly like, okay, how would somebody who's very scientifically minded think about experimental data? How would you try to prove this? Like, what are the different, ways scientifically that you could go about proving that one person is in love with another? And it also has a lot of fun with geeky behavior, or I would say nerdy behavior, with the fact that, nerds are kind of a little obsessive sometimes, and are they do try to prove their own points at times, and very lovingly, and, because these things can kind of turn into the Big Bang Theory, where it's like, haha, watch the geek. This felt much more like, we've all known these people, we've all known, folks who kind of can't see the forest for the trees, but are sure that they're going about things the right way. A lot of fun, a lot of ridiculous stuff on that score. I really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was it again took that premise and executed it really properly, where it didn't try to just tell the same joke over time over time, but it also understood the joke. Right, understood what it was doing with that concept. So if you like goofy romantic comedies and that kind of geeky aspect, that is that definitely. Moving on to Seton Academy. Join the pack. Main character goes to a school with a bunch of animal people. Cat girls, dog girls, horse girls, and guys. Well, the weird thing is, it's kind of hard to see way there in the back. Some of them actually have like animal heads. It's like giraffes are actually giraffe heads. This is very cute. It's clearly, look at that. That's what you're getting into with this anime series. It's very much a school comedy about all these characters getting together, but there's actually a lot of like emotion and heart in the first episode. It actually deals with like feeling like you're alone in a sea of people, feeling like you're different than other people, and feeling like even if you're like other people, you're not really like them. And it's just quite interesting. Also dealing with kind of racism, speciesism, I suppose, and it's odd. I will say if you want to go deep into the whole question of is this really addressing race and all that, I think the metaphor falls apart very quickly. But I enjoyed the attempt at dealing with some of those questions with this kind of a setting, and it's clearly meant to be kind of a goofy idea. It's an excuse to show cute cat girls, basically, as much as possible. So definitely does not take itself very seriously. The teaching staff is the proof of that. So yeah, it's that. It's fun. It is just kind of pure fun with a little bit more heart than you might think. Kind of similarly, Show by Rock Mashumeresh. Now there is a whole bunch of other Show by Rock anime, which I didn't remember going into this. I was like, oh yeah, Show by Rock. I think I've heard of that before. So this is one of multiple Show by Rock anime. It's cute animal girls rocking out as part of a rock band in a world of animal people. So everyone in this world apparently is an animal person. The weird thing is most of the rest are like super deformed animals. I don't know. This is cute. This is cutesy, cute teenage girls hanging out, having a rock band. Very prototypical characters, right? Like, look at these girls, imagine what their personalities might be, and you are right. But as kind of fluff, as a, a fun way to spend 24 minutes watching cute girls rock out, it is that. And I gotta say, when they rock out, oh my gosh, the animation. Oh my gosh, do they put time and money into the animation of these girls on their instruments. Like, Haruhi Season 1 rock band level. Like, yeah. There were some moments in there where I was like, dang, good on you. Smile Down the Runway. So this is another real surprise of the season. It is about a teenage girl who wants to become a runway model, but unfortunately lacks the height. So one of the things about the high fashion industry, so we're talking, Paris runway model thing, is they're all very, very tall women. Because there is this perception that a tall body shows off clothes very well. And seeing how clothes hang on a tall body is very effective, especially on a runway. This is actually a thing outside of the anime, but also shown in the anime. So, Smile Down the Runway is this girl trying to kind of combat that prejudice, if you will, in the industry. And what's also interesting is there's another character who wants to be a guy who wants to become a fashion designer, wants to design the clothes. And so it's basically both of their journeys as they move into this fashion industry. Also, the first episode moves pretty fast. Like, a lot happens in the first episode, which I like, that we kind of get to the point with the plot. And the fact that it is addressing that it is clearly about loving high fashion, but also realizing that industry it has its weirdnesses, right? It has its expectations and things that are not necessarily kind of fair in a global perspective, or kind of arbitrary. So I like it when somebody kind of challenges an industry in that way. And I like the fact that you have this kind of spunky heroine who's gonna stick it to those who are trying to take her down. Then there's Somali and the Forest Spirit. If you like The Ancient Magus' Bride, this is kind of in that zone. You have these main characters. One is this golem that you see, who comes across this human child in the wilderness and decides to protect her. And it is their kind of wanderings through the world. Now, I say Ancient Magus' Bride. That series is about other things. This is more about what young children are like and how you have to be careful about them, how they are naturally inquisitive, and sometimes that's dangerous. So, one of the things I love about this series so far is that it is a very visually imaginative series. There is not a single animal in here that looks exactly like an existing, Earth animal. Everything is fantastical. And it's lovely seeing that. I also like the fact that it is showing that young children are troublesome because of who they are and because of qualities that they have that are in their own way kind of to be celebrated. She sometimes wanders off because she's curious, because she's constantly learning, because she's trying to, understand more of her world. Yeah. So on the one hand, it's clearly, the golem trying to protect this kid who is going to get into danger a lot. And I'm just going to say this. This is an adaptation of an ongoing manga series. The manga is still ongoing. So I'm presuming that Somali is not going to die in the final episode, right? Which I say because what I was worried about this is it was going to be, the forest is dangerous and will kill you, and you see that happening at the end. I think this is not going to be that. It's going to be, be careful, right? But also enjoy the ride. right? Enjoy what that person gives you. And what I really like is the fact that Somali seems to be, well, very clearly is modeling certain human values and certain human things that is starting to get through to the golem. Not directly, but yeah, she's kind of making him more human, kind of indirectly just by her views of the world. So it's interesting seeing how that is explored, and oh my gosh, just visually, this is worth watching. Moving on to Sorcerer Stabber Orphan. So when I saw this was coming out, I was like, wasn't this already a thing? Yes, it was. There was an anime of Sorcerer Stabber Orphan back in the 90s, based on a manga. And as you can see, it looks pretty 90s. I mean, that's a pretty 90s outfit there. And yes, this is a new adaptation of Sorcerer Stabber Orphan. Full disclosure, anime budget on the first episode is a little inconsistent. There's some nicely animated stuff and other stuff where it's like, that was kind of, they could have put a little bit more money into that. So this does not seem like a really high budget production, I will say, in terms of animation quality. Obviously, voice acting, fine. Art quality, I think, is nicely done. They haven't completely reimagined it, but they have kind of updated the visuals to kind of modern anime colors and such. And I think that works well. It doesn't feel out of place, even like the costumes and so forth. But it's very 90s, right? It's wacky sidekicks, it's angsty hero, it's mysterious backstory, it's all that stuff. And again, I say that partly to make fun of it, but also because that's just what that is, right? That is that style. And I think you'll get into that if you're into that style. There are also some things in that just kind of haven't aged as... Not that it hasn't aged well. It's just something we don't see a lot. Got that very over-the-top comedy of people punching each other over and over something, where every argument escalates into somebody being thrown into a river, right? That kind of stuff, which is very different. But yeah, I think if you can get over that stylistic difference, some interesting setting stuff here about how magic works. I was very intrigued by kind of the backstory that they provide, and just again how magic works in general in the world. There's actually kind of this Avatar style, almost like airbending, or bending in general to make magic work. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, so JJ, it's not so much you want to stop the main character and ask why they can't do simple stuff and move on. It's more you want to stop the main character because they keep getting distracted from the main plot because they're arguing with this other person about the fact that they took the wrong turn. It's that kind of thing, right? They are the main character is very competent in their job, but wacky hijinks, right? So that's that. Also, that is Toilet Bound Hanako-kun, which one of the viewers yesterday was like, I wasn't sure about this. So it turns out this is a sort of wacky comedy retake on the idea of Hanako-chan, a spirit said to be in the girls' bathroom in Japan in any given school. So if you're familiar with Moaning Myrtle in Harry Potter, many people believe that is a J.K. Rowling's kind of take on this classic Japanese myth of this girl who's in the bathroom. And so this in the story, this girl goes into this bathroom to call on Hanako-chan, and out pops this spirit, and it turns out it's not what you think it is. And instead it turns into this sort of supernatural comedy where there are other spirits that Hanako has to deal with, while the girl gets kind of trapped in the middle. And it's very much a goofy comedy with sort of supernatural action twists, like the occasional sort of shonen action, gotta take down this monster kind of a thing, which I liked a lot. There's no scatological humor in this that I could see. It's girl and a ghost basically, and them trying to get things done. But I will say the episode actually does deal with like an important element of her character, like a bit of character growth in that first episode. So there is that sort of aspect of, how in a lot of ghost stories where it's really about a character dealing with either a trauma or something that they want that is they really shouldn't want, or be careful what you wish for, that kind of a thing. That's the kind of feel of this series, but with a much more of a comedic, lighthearted, overall tone and structure of the series. What's also interesting is the art style. It doesn't really come across too well in this image, but the art style is very interesting, very colorful, kind of super flat in its own way. Worth checking out just for the art style alone. Getting near the end. This might be our last one. This is our last one, ladies and gentlemen. Uchitama, Have You Seen My Tama? A warm, fuzzy blanket of an anime series. This is about dogs who wander around the neighborhood and get lost and talk to each other, but they appear as, humans. So most of the characters you see here are actually dogs, and you can actually see their dog counterparts around there. So to be clear, unlike what we saw before, these are dogs. They are actual four-legged furry creatures, but when we see them in the anime, interacting, we see them as humanoids. And a dog wanders off and gets lost, and they all go out after him, trying to find him, wandering around the neighborhood, chatting with each other and meeting each other, and then eventually, finding their way back. That's the level of drama here. It's a new dog has moved in. Let's go and see who it is. This is clearly an anime aimed at like 8-year-olds, and I'm all for it. I was just enjoying every moment of this. Very chill, very much just a relax and enjoy the lightheartedness of it. It's just a warm, fuzzy blanket. That's what it is. Obviously, some folks are going to be turned off by this, by the fact that it is very much just it's sugar, it's just pure sugar, but it is very relaxing in that way, very, very slice of life, and just a really lovely thing. Yeah, no furry love, nothing like that. Very cute, very fun, very just. So those are my thoughts on the winter 2020 anime. I'm sure there are one or two that I have not gotten a chance to find, something on Prime or or something somewhere. So this isn't necessarily everything, but this seems like most of it. Hope you found that useful. Thanks for watching.